the demolition of the musculature of the forearm to make what is not a penis.
Holy shit. The penis understander has logged on. You could tell where the passion was coming from there. Holy shit. He's certainly very concerned about this.
Of the musculature of the forearm to make what is not a penis.
What is not a penis?
Lies. Lies. Lies.
We have to talk about the good doctor very briefly. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson and his latest scurvy screed right here. Lately, the right has really been ramping up the hate towards the trans community and towards the gay community and just basically towards every letter in the LGBTQ plus rainbow family. And this one is no different. This one has a really frightening thumbnail, like both the arrest them, the cutting right here. Guess you can see that. Doctors, psychotherapists, liars, and butchers. And I mean, it was a matter of time before Jordan Peterson was going to ramp things up, because Jordan Peterson, if you have forgotten, his entire career is based on transphobia. Transphobia is what launched this man's career. Lying about what Bill C-16 was in Canada, getting everyone super big mad about it, thinking that it was going to get him fired or arrested for compelled speech, for having to say Z or Zer at school, and then he's like, this is about language, and this is about groupthink, and this is about morality, and I do not want to be compelled in my speech and how I use it. I need to be allowed to be an asshole, okay? I want to scream the N-word every single day, and I want to be able to misgender people and everything. And even then, it was all lies. Ultimately, that's not what Bill C-16 was about. It was adding gender to the list of protected groups in Canada, and it is a good thing because, again, people prior to that could have been wrongly terminated for their jobs for being trans. They could have been refused housing for being trans, stuff like that. It also protects them under the articles of genocide, of which groups could be genocided against under Canadian law. So again, he completely lied about it, continues to lie about it to this day. I mean, very recently he went on Tucker Carlson to continue to reiterate, like, I just didn't want to say Z or Zer and compelled speech, and I need my meat, mummy.
Hello, everyone. I'm in Bucharest, Romania, about 2/3 of the way through the European leg of my Beyond Order tour, which seems to be going very nicely. I've spent some time over the last few weeks. It's June 16th, 2022, by the way.
He's such a deeply unhappy man in every way.
Writing a couple of articles for The Telegraph, one of which I'm going to read to you today, called Butchers and Liars. We are sacrificing our children on the altar of a malicious far-left ideology. The medical profession is crumbling in response to radical transgender activists. There's good evidence.
The scary thing about all this, the fact that you are using this as a source is pretty ridiculous. But anyways, the fact that, like, his seriousness, his kind of like tone, his condescending look that he's giving right now, it may be funny to you and me, especially because a lot of it has to do with, I'm sure, the miserable existence of eating only meat and salt every single day. I would probably look and sound like this too. I would probably be very disagreeable. I would probably have waited 3 or 4 days to take a shit, and that would make me very cranky and angry and hate-filled, maybe. But at the same time, the people who follow Jordan Peterson are going to look at this kind of like almost a militant order, to be like, holy shit. I didn't know this. I didn't know that they are going after children. Things have gotten out of control. We let it go too far. How could we allow this? I mean, we gave them bathrooms and now this.
That many ancient societies sacrificed children to their gods. Parents in ancient Phoenician colonies in Carthage, Sicily, Sardinia, and Malta slew their offspring prior to cremating them, hoping that the gods would hear their voices and bless them.
Oof, what a
we are
fucked up
rightly
comparison.
appalled by this, though sometimes I wonder whether we understand child sacrifice far more than we'd like to admit.
Whew, this one's really insidious. Holy fuck. Okay, so we're getting the comparison now that giving your children gender-affirming care is akin to child sacrifice. That's where we're at. That's the current state of the discourse. Holy fuck.
I saw a video the other day featuring an American surgeon bragging that he had performed more than 3,000 double mastectomies on young women who had paid for gender reassignment. Individuals confused, one might say encouraged, by those who profit from it into believing that their adolescent emotional trials can be cured and happy.
Do you understand that those doctors, they don't recommend that to just random patients on a regular basis? It's not like you should take Tylenol for a cold. A person would go to a gender-affirming care clinic and say, I think I have gender dysphoria. Can we start exploring that and then talk about my possible options? There's also a very long process through this. It's not that you just show up at a doctor's office and he's like, how you doing? Oh, not bad. I've kind of got a headache that won't go away. Really? Well, did you think about getting a double mastectomy? I performed them. I'm very good. They're a little expensive, but you could get one right now. I mean, I have an opening, actually. You could just literally right now, you could get a double mastectomy. It could help. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. You forgot about the 3-year wait to get that first meeting? Yeah, there's that as well. Fucking, there's so much wrong with what is coming out of his mouth and fucking from the Telegraph.
Reign forever if they subject themselves to this brutal practice. And it is brutal. A process that often includes not only the aforementioned mastectomies, but other appalling surgical...
Would you say the same thing to someone who had breast cancer? To a woman who had breast cancer who had to have a mastectomy? Would you say that? Would you be like, yeah, it's a brutal process. I can't believe you would do that. I can't believe you would change your body like that. Well, if I didn't do this, I would die. That this was to prevent me from dying. That's why I did this. There's nothing wrong with it. This is a medical procedure. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you ever say that? That's really, really fucked up.
Processes. Orchiectomy, that's castration in blunter language, the removal of the uterus, the demolition of the musculature of the forearm to make what is not a penis.
Holy shit. The penis understander has logged on. I know this isn't his own words, but you could tell where the passion was coming from there. Holy shit. He's certainly very concerned about this.
Of the musculature of the forearm to make what is not a penis.
What is not a penis?
But must be referred to as such. All of that. For someone purporting to be a physician to perform this on children, to me at least, seems like something worthy.
It is not performed on children. Children do not get gender-affirming care in the form of bottom surgery. How many times do we need to hammer this point home? It is used as a scare tactic. It is used by people who want to say they are cutting people's penises off. They're cutting little boys' penises off. No, they're not. They're not doing that. The exception would be to people who are intersex, and that is a decision made by parents that no one ever had a problem with. There was never a crusade against parents who decide what they want the gender of their child to be when they are born, perhaps with both genitalia or a combination of different factors, and all of a sudden the parents are like, well, we would like gender-affirming care for our young boy, so can you please perform something? No one ever talks about that. And these aren't trans people, by the way. They could be trans, but intersex people by definition aren't trans, and then the parents would make that decision. And that was a medical procedure that seems to be agreed upon and not like controversial in the slightest. And yet when it comes to people who want to seek gender affirming care, suddenly it's mutilation. Suddenly, well, they just don't know what they want. This is they're being influenced into it. These doctors are making tons of money by recommending people get mastectomies.
Of a prison sentence. Whatever happened to the doctrine expressed by the ancient language as primum non nocere? First, do no harm.
Not too important? Hey, we can do all the debunking we want. This, quote, doctor mixed up orchiectomy, a step of vaginoplasty, with phalloplasty. Interesting.
The Hippocratic Oath has been replaced by a delusion, a belief that can be summarized as, by blocking the puberty of children and then surgically altering them, we are only restoring what is theirs by right. A child's feelings are the final arbiters of their reproductive destiny. And any
Reproductive? What's reproductive? I need to learn. I guess we should keep promoting his book while we're stealing his content.
attempt to contest their gender identity risks increasing their proclivity for suicide. Lies. 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 Then?
I thought there was more. I thought there were, like, God, you must have been an amazing storyteller to Michaela back in the day, Jordan. I can just imagine, you know? Ba, ba, black sheep, have you any wool?
Butchery. Changing standards. Psychologists, those in my own personal field of medicine, have also surrendered to this groupthink. The American Psychological Association's Task Force on Guidelines for Psychological Practice with Transgender and Gender Nonconforming People, TGNC, insist that psychologists and other professional counselors offer trans-affirmative care, starting with such niceties as displaying TGNC affirmative resources in waiting areas. Practitioners are also asked to examine how their language, e.g., use of incorrect pronouns and names,
He's so scary. God damn.
may reinforce the gender binary
Eat
in
an
overt or
orange.
subtle and unintentional
Have
ways.
one orange, my dude. Treat yourself.
These guidelines first read like a manual of indoctrination
Maybe a grapefruit?
written by Marxist ideologues.
Actually, going this long without any fruits or vegetables, I'm guessing even a lemon would be fucking like an incredible treat. It would be like a regular person eating like the sweetest cake. You'd bite it like, oh my God, all the sugar, it's rushing to my veins.
And second, like a document designed to undermine and destroy the practice of therapy itself. But at an alarming rate, these guidelines have transformed themselves into punitive laws governing what a psychologist or counselor may say and think in relation to their clients. Let me make myself perfectly clear. Speaking as a professional, whether in America, Britain, or anywhere, it is not the place of a therapist to affirm or conversely to deny the identity of anyone whom they admit into their care. People come to see a therapist often after long and painful deliberation because they are suffering, confused, or both.
Do you realize the strangeness of hearing Jordan Peterson say that statement out loud? Because he is considering himself to be a more authority on so many topics right now. Like, I'm not saying that there's not some things that he's got to be incredibly well versed in, because again, he is a doctor in a very specialized field. But every time we have one of these faux academic, like, you know, I know everything about all things, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, this twin snake denotes that they understood what DNA was, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and everyone's like, that wait, what? You don't actually believe that, do you? That's absolute nonsense. Wait, oh no, you're serious. Oh wow, ouch. Okay, well, maybe we shouldn't consider you an expert on all things, right? Like all things. And what we should do, if we want to be fair about this, fair and balanced, TM, is to, I guess, refer to the broad consensus of the medical community, those who do specialize in this, and those who do studies on this, and those who do research on this, and look at the research and the data. And again, I'm just going to keep hammering this point home. Every major American medical association agrees on this. There is not a debate going on amongst the medical community about whether or not gender dysphoria is real, about whether or not people should have safe access to whatever they need in order to help them with it. That's just the world now. You're kind of behind the times on this one, Jordan.
The job of that therapist is to listen, to question, and to proceed with due caution, neither providing cheap advice and thereby stealing their clients' successes or heaping failure upon them, nor assuming...
Like, I'm getting the idea that he thinks there's some kind of weird like psychiatrists are, you know how there's like the doctors who were basically like prescription mills and that was a huge problem that contributed to the opioid crisis, where you could just walk in and then you just get your scripts and walk right out, and people were like, you know, looking to, I think he feels like there's a phenomenon of this going on for trans people or something, where there's just this like rotating door of doctors immediately performing mastectomies or immediately saying, diagnosing people as having gender dysphoria, and it's like this, and then instantaneously, and all of a sudden the whole system is just spiraling out of control or something.
Special knowledge of the proper outcome for a given individual.
He's not a medical doctor. He has jack shit authority on this matter. He has jack shit, let's be honest, authority on anything. He has shown himself to be such a consistent clown on a variety of topics, like to an embarrassing degree, that I don't think people should be taking his advice in any arena, especially on the one that he promotes the most, right? Like, here. I agree with this statement. I do. I do think his best-selling book, Wash Your Penis, is something you should do. You know, gentlemen, ladies, if you have a penis, you should wash it. You should definitely wash your penis. Your penis should be clean. It is both healthy, and most likely, if you're engaging in sexual intercourse, it'll make it a more pleasurable experience for your partner. That much is true. But the rest of the book, it's gibberish. It's absolute nonsense. It's all about dragons of chaos and how he wants to have sex with his grandmother and rubbing his grandmother's pubic hair all over his face, and then he made it into a wig and he just ran around the streets, and like that stuff. It's weird. Okay, it's strange. But the title of the book, Wash Your Penis, that is apt. That is a good thing. Okay.
There is simply no way I would ever tell a 15-year-old adolescent that she is absolutely correct if sometimes she feels more masculine than feminine. However, that feels...
Again, like, what the fuck? Do you think that someone going into a clinic like this happens on a regular basis? We're like, wow, sometimes I feel more like a boy than a girl. Sometimes I feel more like a girl than a boy. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, double mastectomy for you. It's just going to happen now on the spot. Yes.
Feeling might emerge. And that if she feels that surgery is the answer, then recommend hormones that day. I would instead spend many weeks, even perhaps.
This doesn't happen, Jordan. This is a very long process. Like, you know, I've spoken to trans people in Canada, by the way, who have gone through this. Like, there are waiting lists. There's a lot of consultation. It's not a fucking revolving door system. You do not walk into a room and all of a sudden they're like, okay, HRT, and we'll book you for that mastectomy right now. You've said a series of 5 or 6 words. That's all we needed to hear.
Many months or years listening to her unwrap her story, using caution as my watchword, and help her to come to some thorough and well-developed understanding of both her autobiographical history and her...
Oh, this is only 6 minutes. God damn it. How do people pay money to see this man? Like fucking stadiums filled with people to listen to this. He is so fucking dry. Even when he's really angry and is talking about the penis. Like...
destiny. That is not affirmation, and neither is it denial. How could I possibly dare to do either when someone has come...
By the way, he 100% would have been doing eugenics and race science like 50 years ago. 100%. I'm calling it now. If anyone develops time travel and can then transport baby Peterson into a different area, 100%, that would be where his stance would be.
To me, because they are mixed up and desperate, a state of twinned experience indicating a profound confusion about identity itself. Radical new guidelines. I am focusing on the American Psychological Association, APA, because it is the body charged with establishing the norms and ideals for clinical practice in the most populous democracy on earth. Principles that will and are spread around the West more broadly, including in Britain. Some of their guidelines are appalling enough to deserve...
Okay, you know what's fucked up is that, like, you know, I try to be a half decent, let's say, educated individual on these issues, gender issues and trans issues, and I have so much learning to do. I will fully admit my faults, but I have taken in a fuck ton of information. My understanding of all this stuff is like worlds beyond what it was 5 years ago, and I have never once experienced gender dysphoria along that travel. Like, I've never once suddenly been like, whoa, maybe I wasn't a man all along. Oh, wow, this ideology is starting to work on me. Perhaps I'm a woman and I should walk into one of those clinics I've heard so much about where I only have to say a few things like I think I'm a woman, and then immediately they'll give me that HRT and all the surgery I could ever ask for. It happens like on the spot. Like I don't like It doesn't matter how much you learn about certain topics. That isn't going to indoctrinate you into, like, this is a fucking human understand. Would you apply this to anything else? Would you apply this to, like, chemistry? Would you apply this to history? Like, if you learn about Hitler, do you then become Hitler? If you learn about Pol Pot, do you become Pol Pot? If I explain to you the good things or the bad things of a certain person, are you suddenly going to be like, well, suddenly I'm Hitlerizing in real time. Oh, I can't. The Weimar Republic must fall. Like, what the fuck?
Dissection. Guideline 1. Psychologists understand that gender is a non-binary construct that allows for a range of gender identities and that a person's gender identity may not align with sex assigned.
And again, this is all shit that, like, I get it. You don't understand this. This is weird and scary to you. That's the extent of it. But that doesn't mean you then get to legislate and or try to tell people what to do and vilify them along the way. Like, that's the really fucked up thing about all this. I completely get it that to you, this is like, it doesn't make sense. It does not compute. And you're just like, you can't wrap your head around this. And so, yeah, sure, fine. But keep that in the bedroom, Jordan. Keep that in the home. You don't have to spill that out into the world. You're making the world a worse place with all of this.
At birth. I don't understand this.
I watched Kung Fu Panda. Now I'm overweight. I tell you, that's what happens. That's what happens.
Postmodern definition of gender.
Yeah, I sped it up. It's
one that rests on a person's deeply felt or inherent sense of being one sex over another.
Wait, that actually might explain a lot of things. Because you know he's obsessed with the Bible. Maybe he read the Bible and thinks he's God. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe that's the origin story of his whole God complex. That could be it.
When I was reading Revelations and I saw the second coming, I realized that it was more than just having the double orgasm. I realized that I may, in fact, be the Son of God himself, and so it's a matter of time before I'm crucified.
Regardless of biology. Psychologically, it is indisputably the case that a non-trivial proportion of males have a feminine temperament, which essentially means that they experience higher levels of negative emotion, such as anxiety and the analogs of pain.
Okay. Ladies be anxious, am I right, fellas? What a fucking condescending thing to say. I feel sometimes that I have feminine traits, and the things that are associated with femininity, I experience quite a bit, and I'm very proud of those. Okay, I'm very, very proud of that. I like being empathetic. Okay, I quite enjoy it. I like listening to someone tell me of their struggles or pain, and then trying to relate to it, and then trying to help them and or make their day feel better. I don't think those are bad things. Okay.
Frustration, disappointment, depression,
it also doesn't make
are
me
more
trans.
agreeable, compassionate, polite than typical males, and equally true that a non-trivial proportion of females have a masculine temperament. But this does not change how, objectively, professionals should measure a person's gender.
And they don't. That's not it. You dumb fuck. Like, no one is going to get gender-affirming care and want to get diagnosed with gender dysphoria because they exemplify some traits that society associates with either men or women. You know, these societal constructs. Like, people could be like, yeah, I'm a tomboy. And then it's like, yeah, okay, I'm a femboy. Those people are totally normal. Doesn't make them trans. They could be trans in addition to that, but you're just like trying to associate the two things as if people are suddenly getting irreversible surgeries against their will because they just didn't understand the question.
Psychologists once cared if measurement followed standard practices of validity and reliability. Try reading, for example, a document published by the APA itself in 2014, where you will learn that a psychologist worthy of his salt is obliged to utilize
Peterson's wife has prophetic dreams. I listened to this recently, and this is the first time I'm hearing of Peterson's wife having some kind of dream about a hopeful future. Peterson's response to the question seemed to indicate that it might be exactly what it sounds like, that he thinks his wife has some kind of prophetic dreaming power, and a Google search yielded this. Control F for dream will give you the content in question. Though Peterson himself hasn't confirmed this claim, he hasn't outright denied it when confronted with it either. So in short, who wants to convince me Peterson isn't a closet lunatic? That's in the Jordan Peterson Reddit. Oh, that's why it's so downvoted. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Constructs, i.e. terms such as gender, in a technically appropriate manner. This means at the very least that fundamental attributes must be measurable and measured properly. But all that goes out the window when we're discussing the
That's the weirdest thing, though, is that like that is what they do. There are questions they ask. There are questionnaires they have to fill out. That is not, again, a revolving door system. There is a process. I know you don't understand the process or haven't really looked into it, but it is not simple as someone going in, hey, I feel a little bit like a woman today. Can you do anything about that? And they're like, oh yeah, buckle up.
Magic of gender now, which is entirely subjectively defined, even though that insistence indubitably contravenes the earlier standards. But feelings uber alles, folks, and it's no joke, particularly if you're 15 and have undergone...
Okay, this is the thing that's going to be really hard for him to wrap his head around. Yes, gender is a social construct, and we associate the archetypes of gender with a whole bunch of different things in society, and those things change over time. For example, men used to be a lot more feminine, say in the Victorian era, where they would wear makeup, they would have on long wigs, things that you might associate today with being, I don't know, drag or stuff like that. But these archetypes, they change over time about what is masculine or feminine, and we all do a variety of things and have surgery sometimes to reaffirm our own ideas and standards of beauty and gender. Men can do things like getting hair plugs, for example. In fact, that is a very popular thing that a lot of men do because the societal pressures and standards that we place upon ourselves seems to give men a sense of insecurity once their hair starts falling out. They see there's like a vilification of people who are bald, broadly speaking. Now, that's something that should change. I think bald shaming is a pretty shitty thing, but ultimately, these are things that people do all the time. Women, cis women, get breast implants because they think that will be more desirable to men if they have larger breasts. They do that. That you can consider something that they are doing to affirm both their sense of attractiveness and what is more female feminine to them, their idea of that. And all of this happens without any complaints. So if someone wants to do something that helps to confirm their gender, and it happens to be something that you are in opposition to with because they were assigned a different gender at birth, that's where the problem starts. Everything else was totally fine. Everything else is just cool and normal, all right? Everything else is not something that you would ever start a crusade against.
Surgery that makes you incapable of reproducing, often to foster someone else's sense of moral superiority or sense of self-attributed.
Dudes take testosterone. Like, guys take steroids to try and bulk up and become bigger because they think that is what the ideal version of a man is going to be, and they want to be monstrously huge and shit like that.
Passion, a word that increasingly makes me shudder when I encounter it. New doctrines. Psychologists are also now adopting the simple-minded and anything but revolutionary doctrine of intersectionality without question. And what is that doctrine? Nothing more than the claim that human beings are characterized by identities that span multiple dimensions. Any given person has a race, ethnicity, sex, temperament, 5 dimensions there alone, intelligence level, etc. We've known that forever. It's only became a hot cultural item since fools noted the obvious fact that minority status might be additive or multiplicative. I hate to even point out, given that anyone with any sense whatsoever also knew without any statistical training that it was possible to be of Latino extraction, say, or even Latin X, to use that absurd, demeaning, and patronizing term, and female simultaneously. One cannot question this, however, without fear of being ostracized by one's colleagues. Note the chilling wording of Guideline 7.
He would have made such a good duke, you know, or a bishop.
Psychologists understand the need to promote social change that reduces the negative effects of stigma on the health and well-being of TGNC people. In summary, if you're not an activist and one of our activists, then you better be watching over your shoulder. So what should govern my behavior as a therapist and your expectations as a client? The answer to that is whatever the activists deem a priority at their whim. And remember that in court, folks. Active.
This is so silly. Do you think, like, first off, this is kind of that old school thing where your enemy or opponent has to be like extremely powerful and at the same time extremely inept and weak simultaneously, where somehow that confliction doesn't arise. But the idea is that there's this incredibly powerful lobby, the trans lobby, and they're so big and powerful, they've kind of insidiously controlled all of our media and government, and they've now made their way into the medical professions, and they are making people and psychiatrists specifically have to give out diagnoses that they do not agree with. That is basically the state of what we're at. These activists, if you will, the trans people and their allies have gone too far, and now they're basically pushing gender ideology down our throats. It's like, this is stuff that has already always existed trans people didn't just suddenly begin in the year like 2001. That wasn't like the birth of trans people. And then always, like, they've always existed. They may not have existed in environments in which it was safe for them to exist. So the numbers probably were not very high for people who were willing to come out as trans. But the study and the science of all of this has come such a long way. And if you want to live in the Stone Ages, well, I mean, you would have to apply that to so many different things. Like, I don't think you're allowed to take penicillin anymore. I don't think you're allowed to take whatever supplements you have to take to avoid having scurvy from only eating meat and salt. Like, you have to forego other aspects of, human discovery, if that's where, because, like, if it isn't based on your bigotry, if you genuinely think you're coming from a place where this doesn't make sense, well, you don't apply that to anything else. It's not as if, like, you have a broken leg and you have to get surgery, and it's like,
Oh, no anesthesia. Anesthesia's a myth. It's been propagated by mother.
Malevolence. I'm increasingly ashamed to be a clinical psychologist, given the utter cowardice, spinelessness, and apathy that characterizes many colleagues, and even more so my professional associations. At least in 20 years, when we all come to regret this terrible social experiment, I may be able to say, I said no, when they all...
Yeah, in 20 years, y'all are gonna look so fucking bigoted. Honestly, so bigoted. You're gonna be like modern day eugenicists, skull measurers, all of you. It's gonna be like, it's already becoming a lot more accepted, broadly speaking, in society, okay? One of the things that we do have to remember, even though there is this horrifying pushback from the right and, this ongoing attack on trans people, is that broadly speaking, the majority of Americans and Canadians do not hate trans people. Like, look at poll after poll after poll on these kind of topics. There is, unfortunately, kind of a governing of the minority and a fear-mongering of the minority in these topics, and they can be very, very profitable, because people who do hate trans people and people who are scared of trans people really get inflamed when you talk about this kind of shit, really get mad when you talk about this kind of shit, and now they feel like they're really under threat, and now they have to push back, and now they're starting to strike out in violent ways.
Came to insist that we participate in the sacrifice of our children. Other countries, and Britain in particular, must not make the same mistakes as in the US and elsewhere. I cannot consent to what we are doing. I cannot abide by what have become the doctrines of my discipline. I believe that the acts of the medical professional rushing to disfigure, sterilize, and harm young people with what are clearly ill-advised, dangerous, and experimental procedures cross the line.
What? Experimental procedures? So that doctor that you were talking about earlier in this article, who apparently had given proudly hundreds of mastectomies, and by the way, mastectomies are given to cis women as well. They're given to cis women, even not as a form of gender affirming care. Some cis women have very large breasts, and it causes them to have back problems. So they have breast reduction surgery. Do you think that's an experimental procedure? Would you approve of that? Would that be okay? Is that something that's allowed to happen? Like, is it only not allowed to happen if it happens to be because it is going to help someone's gender dysphoria? That's the only time when it's not okay, I'm assuming. A friend of mine had breast reduction for her back pain and migraines like 2 weeks ago, and she's so happy. I knew of someone in high school, because I know they're always talking about how high schoolers are all, mutilating themselves. I knew someone in high school, a friend of mine, had enormous breasts, and she was having a lot of problems from it. She was having problems like jogging, exercising. It was always causing her back pains. So she got breast reduction surgery when she turned, I think, 17. And it made her quality of life way better. Way better. And like... Why is that one okay? And then someone else's quality of life is also made better by the exact same procedure, but that one is mutilation. Mutilation, totally fine.
To outright harm. Only if we bury our heads in the sand will sterility, impaired or absent sexual function, complex reactions to poorly understood hormones, expense, and intermingled with all of that, misery and confusion, continue for countless young people. We must address the threat posed to the integrity of the entire education system, as well as indoctrination into the same philosophy that spawned this surgical enterprise and the APA guidelines grows.
So it's all about the money. This is a new angle. Yes, the surgical enterprise. Like, I would not want to be a gender-affirming care doctor or clinic right now. They are being targeted by some very scary people online. They get death threats. They get bomb threats. They get people who say they're going to show up and like kill people, okay, in Roblox on a regular basis. People, assholes like James Lindsay, will point out on maps where you can find all the gender affirming clinics, wink kind of shit, right? So no, I think the doctors that are doing this in this like time are incredibly brave. It's the same thing with abortion doctors. I think what they are doing is incredibly noble and brave because they are doing that in spite of the dangers that it presents to them.
Threatens general public trust that our peace and prosperity depends upon. And
is Roblox like a running joke? It's to kind of insulate you from TOS, because you can't say I'm going to Roblox myself as just even like a saying as a joke. You can't just say that sentence out loud, like that's against TOS.
by the way, it will most
like if you're like, oh, Jordan Peterson is pissing me off so much, I'm going to Roblox myself. You know, that sentence, if I'd replaced Roblox with you know what, then yeah, that would have been TOS.
Definitely be the case that a disproportionate number of children free.
It used to be in a video game, but I guess it just evolved. It went from in a video game to in Minecraft to in Roblox. And then what will be next? I'm excited to learn.
From their hypothetical gender confusion would have grown up to be physically intact and fully functional gay adults. Need I point out that this
and then you could be a bigoted person towards gay people, you know, because you'll definitely be really accepting to the gays. That's the thing that's happening on a regular basis.
It's the testosterone-laden man when it comes to this serious business of sex.
palatable fact makes a mockery of any claim that the extended alphabet world of the LG.
He thinks that trans people are just gay. Oh, that's not a new thing. I'd like to give that one exclusively to Jordan Peterson, but we're hearing tons of people. Fucking Bill Maher said that on a segment where he was like, you know, little kids are stupid, okay? They're dumb. And I just want to say that maybe instead of cutting your dick off, you might just be gay. And you're like, holy fuck, that's the liberal. This is the liberal take. This is supposed to be the ally to the trans community, the one that's going to like stand up for trans rights. Holy fucking hell. That is incredibly offensive to multiple groups at the same time. And yeah, trans women can be gay. They can be gay and into women.
LGBTQ plus
they can be
coterie
bisexual.
in any sense constitutes a
They can be
homogenous
pansexual.
and unified
They can be straight.
community. We have crossed the line from ideological possession to active malevolence, and we are multiplying our sin. There's an intersection for you by attributing our appalling actions to compassion. Heaven help us. Truly.
Say Peterson out. No!
Peterson, out! I'm coming for you, Zers. I won't stop till there's no Zers left. I'll Z every Zer.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earthhuman, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, GENITAL, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojak, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramona Costa, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.